And I'm going to set the tone by being first and being brief here. But and as Pete said, a lot of us asked to be able to share some thoughts and memories of Don after having his service last weekend. As I was walking up here, I realized we missed an opportunity. Probably the best stories could have been by Betty Hamley and Gene on some Don stories. But looking at it personally, the biggest way Don influenced me is by providing the opportunity to lead pretty early in my career and often. And there's a lot of chances he gave me, and that all came with pretty high expectations that I would put the clients first, the client's needs first, and that I owned every project that came across my desk. And probably the best example I had, I took my 10 examples down to one so we could keep this short. But my best example was one of my first jobs at Bergmann. I was a young bridge engineer, a young structures engineer out of school. I didn't know a lot about bridges and what bridge inspection meant and those kind of things. So I was given the opportunity actually working with Ken on the Hoosick River Bridge, probably 600-foot truss, 75 foot in the air over the Hoosick River north of Detroit. And Don won the job somehow. Maybe Brian has the story of how we won that job, but I think it's a lot about trust. And so I was assigned to model the bridge and lead some of the inspections. And early on in the process, I was told I was going out to the project to inspect the bridge, and our CEO was coming out with me along with our department leader. So I'm in the car all day with Don going out to see this bridge, and I don't remember a lot about the trip out there, but I remember pulling up underneath this bridge, not knowing as an engineer what an inspection of a bridge means. I figured we were going to walk across it, look at the bridge, get some binoculars and look at it from the below. But we parked the car underneath this bridge, and Don jumps out of the car. John Flint jumps out of the car, and they hop on the bottom cord of this truss and start walking out across the water because Don wanted to see the problem and be able to talk to the client about the problem and be part of the solution to the problem. So as a young engineer, I still can picture standing underneath that bridge trying to decide whether I was going to follow my CEO out over that bridge or where my career was going to go after that point. But I did. We inspected the bridge for probably 6 years. Then we eventually replaced the bridge. So that's my start of the story. Tom's going to take it over next. And
well, I'm one of the oldies, I know, but actually a newbie when it comes to the group that's going to talk today. I only worked for Don for 2.5 years. I came to Bergmann in August of 2001, and the board elected me CEO when Don retired in January 2004. So we didn't have a lot of time together. But I met Don in 1984. I moved to Rochester with my family, and I attended a local engineering meeting. Don was some function with a state organization, and he came over to me, introduced himself, and then introduced me to many people in the room. And it was within a few weeks I was on a committee with him. And over the years, he kept giving me chairmanships of various organizations, both engineering related. Don was very much dedicated to the engineering profession, but also the design business, but also the community. There probably wasn't a place I went here in town, some community organization that I got involved in. Often Don introduced me to that I didn't meet a Bergmann person, generally a Bergmann leader, but also many Bergmann volunteers were helping these organizations. And it set an impression of Bergmann to me, that Bergmann was a community leader, gave back to the community, and that was really the type of company that I really thought a lot of and wanted to be part of. But I think importantly for my own development, Don would constantly call me, and I would hate to see his name come up in the display to give me another job to do. Now, I didn't work for Bergmann, but I was with a competitor company, but he always had an assignment for me, and generally it was to lead this or lead that. And sometimes I wanted to say no, but I couldn't. I don't know why I couldn't. I guess it was courage, lack of courage. But I reflected last year when I did. The company gave me a retirement party, and I reflected really on my personal development, and it really came outside of Bergmann in having to lead volunteers. It's one thing to have the power of in an organization, the power of the purse, power, positional power. But when you lead volunteers, you have to lead with vision, and you have to lead with values, and people won't come along if they don't believe in you and what you believe in and where you're going, your vision. And I think that helped my development. And, you know, I think when Don asked me to join the company in 2001, you know, it was an easy thing to say yes, because I could see that in this organization, but I also recognize that, you know, he recognized in me, you know, that development, you know, into a leader. So very appreciative of Don, always liked Don, but we really didn't spend a lot of time together. But, you know, I think as others will say, he could see talent. I'm not saying I had talent, but I had a work ethic. I never said no, and I always worked the extra hours to do what he asked me to do. But at the same time, you know, I'm very appreciative of him reaching out and getting me involved and giving me opportunities to lead.
So when I was a college student, I would come home from time to time and visit with my family. And one time, a gentleman came to our house who happened to work with my dad at the same engineering company. They lived about a mile away from us, and they would carpool to work every day. And that person was very, very interested in what I was doing at college and what I was inspired to do, you know, and listened very carefully to me. That person was Don Bergmann, and when I finally left college, I had an opportunity to go to work for the biggest water resources firm in the world at the time, or I could have gone to work at Erdman Anthony. And Don's inspiration made a big difference in my choosing to go with Erdman and Anthony at that time. Now, I was hired twice by Don later when I went to Bergmann, and from an experience there was that he came over to me one time. We somehow won a Northeast Corridor Improvement Project job, 17 miles of track realignment and bridge work on the Northeast Corridor from Harold to New Rochelle. He says, Kenny, we've got a couple of dozen curves that we need to realign on this track. And he probably spent no more than 20 minutes with me, kind of orienting me. And I couldn't tell whether or not he realized that I didn't have a clue about what he was talking about. And yet, I left there feeling like, okay, I can do this. And even though I couldn't, but I got a lot of help from people, other people in the company. But, and then later we went actually and walked the track one day. And because Don was a bridge engineer, we climbed up into the tower of the Hellgate Bridge, the iconic Hellgate Bridge. And I'm terrified of heights, very terrified of heights. We climb up in the tower, he walks out on the top chord of this bridge. It's probably 5 feet wide, it's a pretty long bridge. I take a picture of him, then I go out there and takes a picture of me. I wish I had those pictures, but that's kind of a model for what it was like working with Don. It was sometimes fearful because we were put in places that were uncomfortable. Yes. But boy, did it allow us to grow, and it allowed us to have challenge after challenge, be able to eventually take on bigger and bigger challenges, and that's how we grew. You know, for most people, seeing is believing. You know, show me what you've done, show me your expertise. For Don, believing was seeing, and if he could make us believe in ourselves, that went a long ways to building the company. Lastly, I dug this up, and this is I got a bonus one time in 1987, and I wrote a little note to thank Don, and I wrote it on the 24th of August, and he writes back the very same day. He writes back to me, thanking me for sending a thank you note, but also saying things like, you know, it's people like you that create motivation for others, and the company will be in good hands in the future. He never let pass an opportunity to encourage us. So I'm very thankful for Don's life and for how he influenced me.
That's great, Ken. How much was the bonus? So good morning, just a couple real quick stories from my end. When I think of Dan, I think of this young guy in his 40s and my interview. And I was working at the DOT and wasn't being inspired in my work environment. So I came in on a Saturday to meet with Don. Brian was the one recruiting me to come in and help with transportation. But the firm was probably 25 to 30 people in size, and Don obviously was going to be involved in recruitment. And I came in on a Saturday for this formal interview, kind of shaking at the knees a little bit. And I go into his office, and he's in his tennis outfit with a cigar hanging out of his mouth, unlit. Very casual, the racket's there, and I'm feeling like, oh, this guy's got one foot out the door, and you know, I'm holding him up. But really, what he did, he took all the time that was needed. We had a very thoughtful discussion, and even at that time, his interview wasn't about my skill set so much, or you know, the technical. It was, where do you see yourself in 20 years, Mac? And he always called me Mac. You know, what do you see you being to advance your career at Bergmann? You know, doing the things you want to do. And it was, you know, I walked out of the interview going, yeah, because it's a big decision to leave a job you have to go to a small firm. And I walked out of that interview going, yeah, I want to come to Bergmann. And Brian had a lot to do with that too, but Don sealed the deal. And then one other quick story, we were chasing the Stutson Street movable bridge. It's now called the O'Rourke Bridge. Big job, about 65 million. And we were in a strategy session trying to figure out how we're gonna win the job. And I think we were probably getting a little off track. And Don took his yellow pad and he ripped off the tiniest little corner of the piece of paper, and he held it on the tip of his finger to everybody around the room. He goes, I've just written down every project that's more important than the Stutson Street Bridge project on this piece of paper. And it kind of refocused us. And I think it was along the lines of what Ken was saying. He wanted us to get out of our comfort zone and not do rational behavior that kept us where we were. He wanted us to go to new places and aspire to new heights. And every once in a while I use that little trick. I think I might have done it with Interloop when we were chasing it, but it's kind of a neat little thing. So if you ever see me coming with a little piece of paper, so there's two good memories at home. Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to my friend and mentor, founder, Brian Doherty.
I first met Don and working summers in 1966. If you believe that. We were working on key links, excuse me, on the Tennessee Expressway. There were times in the fall of 1980 that we leaned back in our chairs and scratched our respective heads at what we were doing. We were just a bunch of kids. Let it be known far and wide that we knew exactly what we were doing. After all, Don had made the rounds early in the day of October 3rd, 1980, and handed us each a single yellow pad. There was a message there. It was that we should use both sides of the yellow paper. Some people have suggested Don handed out a single sheet of paper to each of us. Excuse me, but that's just not true. Trust me. From that day forward, we did use both sides, and we figured that doubled our chances of winning a project. Double-sided yellow paper theory was born. There was little doubt about who we would do this adventure with. Don was far and away the leader we chose to follow. Summarizing some of the things you've heard, Don had the vision of chasing and doing projects that were just outside our reach. Don had guts. We competed aggressively. We could win our share if we stayed smart and confident. Don could work the room better than any other, always ready to teach. How important marketing was, easier seen as we look back in time. Establishing relationships with key players. He spent his time knowing talented people. Don did not micromanage how we ran our groups, but he was always there in case there was an oops. Historically speaking, we had South Clinton Avenue and the Webster Mall under contract when we started. Their successful completion meant cash flow, an important event. If Don was ever appreciated three words, they would be positive cash flow, and soon the bank was history. We sat one day and reminisced, a chance to talk that we couldn't miss. The question arose, how did we succeed? Three of us said, fear of failure. A remarkable occurrence indeed. I estimate we've had over 2,500 employees come and go, some here today, some not even born yet. Chase that job, sign that paper, catch us if you can. We had the formula and organization chart generic. It may be, here it is for all to see. Don was the bridge guy, Brian was the highway guy, Gary was the development EIS guy. You likely know the rest. Gene was there to burn out the motors on every word processor they gave us. She was the key person always there to save us. There was a digital and visual computer that Don was introduced to in a visit to his daughter in LA. He decreed he must have one of them. The name was Onyx. The price tag can't be spoken about.
300 grand.
I can say it was more than just a few yellow pads. We got it, we used it, we won some jobs with it, and who'd have thunk? I couldn't have predicted all the offices you now have. I couldn't have guessed there would be over 400 staff. I recall Don saying one day on the walk back to the office that the Washington building only holds 300 people. Well, that got a laugh, and today I eat my words. Another thing that got a laugh was the words in the mass mailing Don sent out. On day 3 of the job, Don sent a letter out and said, "It is with pleasure and enthusiasm that we announce the formation, blah, blah, blah." He got his message out, and again, I eat my words. Don had a tendency to slightly confuse the employee that attended a one-on-one meeting with him. In the end, the employee came out of the session extremely motivated and free to perform. I recommended once that a frozen turkey be given to each employee at Thanksgiving. Gary is still laughing and the turkeys live another day. Take this sage advice that started with Don, apply it to your home life and workplace. Have a few laughs along the way, and make new stories that we can share at the upcoming 50th, which is 10 years after the 40th, but we're working on it. I would have liked to see Don do all those retirement things. He got a few good years, and we must be thankful for that. Consider these words as you return to your desk today. You are free to perform. And yes, Don would say that was okay.